All right, we are live. Welcome to another episode of Roasting Marshmallows. My name is Rolf Zuid and I am your host. On the show, we've talked a lot about books, and we've even had a few guests that wrote one. It has crossed our minds to write a book of our own a few times as well, called For Scouts, The Book. Is it hard to write a book? Why should you even do it? And how should you cope with writer's block when you are writing the book? Will you use a typewriter, or are there maybe some more sophisticated tools out there? Today, we are roasting marshmallows with Wouter Lagerweij, and Wouter is currently in the process of writing a book called A Product Owner's Guide to Escaping Legacy, How to Get Back in Control and Start Delivering Again. It's a pretty long title, by the way. But as a developer, manager, product owner, and as an agile coach working with people in all those roles, Wouter has been dealing with legacy for a large part of his life. He loves spending time with teams and organizations to figure out how to improve the way they make software and make it more fun. To make that happen, Wouter uses the knowledge and skills gathered in over 15 years of experience applying agile processes and practices from XP, Scrum, Kanban, Lean, and systems thinking. And occasionally he will even use common sense. Welcome, Wouter.
Thanks, Rolf.
Nice.
Good to be here.
So we've been experiencing some technical difficulties, but I think the lag is a bit less this time, right? Arno, Sylvester?
Yeah, we're good to go, man.
Yeah, man. You fixed it.
Yeah,
I like your solution.
Yeah, just unplug some things and everything works again. So I need to fix that. I don't know how yet, but we'll figure it out. So Wouter, why would you even write a book? Why did you decide to do it?
Yeah, well, good question, because I think I have the same. I had the same situation that you just mentioned, right? You've got somewhere on your backlog, you've got the For Scouts the book, which I definitely want to read, by the way. So
okay, well, we got one sale already
as an upvote for that particular.
Yeah,
but no, I've had like some ideas about writing about the subjects that I encounter at work.
Yeah,
I work with clients. I run into specific issues, most of them repeatedly. So you get something of an urge to make a story out of that, and maybe reach a broader audience. And of course, that never happens because
busy.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's that sounds really familiar to me. At least.
Yeah.
But so in my case, I was talking to someone I'd run into at a conference, and they were in the process of writing a book.
Okay.
And some of that touched on some areas that I know something about. So I was enlisted to give some feedback on some chapters, and
Okay.
And apparently I talk too much. So
Okay.
he said, well, good, but that's kind of out of the scope for this book. Maybe you should write your own. And here's I've just sent my publisher your contact details. So apparently that's how it works.
Okay.
So you talk too much, people trying to find a way to get rid of you, and before you know it, you're writing.
That's pretty interesting, right? Because you said like, hey, I have some publisher details, so you just contact the publisher, say like, hey, I have an idea for a book. You wanna help me out, and then that's how it gets started. Because I always thought like it's the other way around, like. Yeah. I have this book, I have this manuscript, maybe halfway finished already. Let me submit these papers to publishers and see if there's any interest.
I think that for most fiction books, that's definitely the case. But the publishers in the technical area, they have a portfolio, right? So they have specific areas that they want to address. And they've got something of a competition going on between the different publishers. Mm-hmm. So if one of the publishers has a book about a certain topic, then the others want to join the party, or maybe want to expand that if it turns out to be successful. Yeah. So in this case, I talked with the publisher, and they said, well, we're definitely interested in getting more books in this area. Yeah. And that area was tech adjacent. I think is probably the best way to describe it. Right?
That's pretty broad.
Sorry?
That's pretty broad.
That's pretty broad. That's pretty broad. No, but this was also the thing that I had in my mind. Right? There's a lot of books about. In my case, I'll deal with legacy a lot. There's a lot of books about legacy.
Yeah.
But there's Michael Feller's book. How to deal with legacy code. There's David Bernstein has a book about legacy code, but they're mostly focused on code.
Yeah.
And I run into a lot of people that suffer from legacy, but don't necessarily.
Everybody does, huh?
Code it. Everybody does. But I had a lot of discussion with the publisher because I said, well, they were there. It's packed, and they have at least the people I was talking with. They have a lot of experience with real technical books. So the templates I get, they include things like code. How do you do a code example?
Yep.
Right. So they've got all that sort of sorted.
Yep.
And this was a little beyond that.
But did you already have an idea then, to what you're going to write about? So you went to the publisher and then like, oh, I have an idea, or was it more? Or was it different?
So it kind of was a two-way street. So I had an idea because. But basically, the last 5 years, I kept running into the same issues and doing a lot of the same things and refining the process with which I do that. So that was kind of what I wanted to write down, what I wanted to share. And they actually already had an idea about, wanting more books that are in the area of code and systems, but also, broadening to process. So that was a good match. That was a coincidence. But
so how did it actually go? Did you just, because the contact details were left, and then you just called them? Like, okay, can we talk? Or did you schedule a formal meeting?
No,
and then you went there, and then
it's just an initial conversation, a Zoom call.
And when did you decide to actually go through with it? Like to really say, okay, now I'm going to write a book.
Months. That was a process of months.
Yeah. Okay. So it's not one talk and then it's done.
No. Well, one of the things that was surprising for me is that I kind of mentioned I said the title is like Escaping Legacy, and that was not the first idea for a title, but they were all about dealing with legacy from a product point of view. Right? That's kind of what this book is about. I really want to give the product people the tools and the ways of thinking so that they can feel comfortable being involved in the process. But the word legacy apparently was
it's a curse word, right? Yeah, it's almost a curse word.
Well,
for some teams,
oddly enough, one of the ways that you can look at legacy is this is software that runs on it's written on COBOL and runs on an old IBM mainframe, and that was apparently, with the people I was talking to, that was the version of that word that they were familiar with, and they were like, that's not a big market.
So you first had to explain what it actually meant.
Well, I explained that, and they were like, yeah, well, you say that, but
so there was a market research or what?
Yeah. So we actually did 2 rounds of research. One of them was mostly in my contacts, right? So people I know, either through LinkedIn, sending them something or directly.
I feel left out, Wouter, but yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well, you're not a product owner, right? So
that's true.
No.
That's true.
No. I already know exactly what you said.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's also true.
But no, it's all product people or line managers in tech organizations, and they were all like, "Yeah, we know that problem. That's what we call it." And so they were okay. So, but let's broaden the scope a bit.
Yeah.
So we
outside
did
your bubble
survey on LinkedIn and on Reddit on a few product groups, product focus groups. And the results were 90% of the respondents were like, yeah, yes, we have those problems. Yes, we see that as legacy, either legacy system or legacy way of working. And there was a lot of interest in reading more about it, or in some way of getting the feel of, there might be a way out of this. So that was good. Yeah, the pain is definitely there. Yeah. And yeah, well, you know how this is, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you got a confirmation. Well, at least you have the title and the subject. And was it already brewing in your head? Like, okay, I want to outline like this, or?
Yeah, I went through like 5 different variations of the main outline. Partially because also in discussion with the publisher, I very much wanted to center it around legacy. And initially they were like, well, I don't know. So I also made a version that was less focused on that and more generic about product and agile. And I was less happy about that one. So when we got the results back from the surveys and we got agreement that this could be the focus of the book, I made a new one which kind of combined those aspects, but kept the focus really on the legacy, on dealing with legacy. Yeah. And I'm happy with that. Yeah.
So what else does a publisher do for you? I'm just asking, right? I have no clue. I see a lot of self-publishing these days. Apparently that's also hot. And I get, they help you with market research and figure out a topic that might work for their market. But what else does a publisher do? Publish books, I know that part, but in more detail.
There's a couple of things that they do. So knowing the market, but also, I haven't gone through that yet, but the marketing after you actually publish the book, right? They deal with the publishing itself. They deal with editing and layout. They provide editors both for language and also subject matter experts. So they have a role in shaping the form of the book, and in getting feedback. And one really important one, which I think is for me perhaps the most important one, is they actually badger you to keep on writing.
The deadline.
Oh, really? So you signed a contract or what?
I did sign a contract. Yes.
That's why they do that.
So even if it's a contract, I'm supposed to deliver the book, and then I have kind of a timeline, though it's fairly flexible, and we're in continuous communication about that. Where I say, "Oh, I'm sorry, this is going to be late," and they say, "Oh, okay."
But if you have a timeline, like you have to estimate. Do you estimate your chapters and stuff, and give them story points?
You went there, Rolf. You went there. Oh, come on.
I went there.
You actually went there. Okay. Yeah.
No, I did what anyone familiar with estimation practices would do, which is
13.
I looked at
42.
42
books that are out there, and what roughly the normal chapter count, page count for a chapter is, and I guessed around that number whether I would be writing a lot about that subject, or that's in that chapter, or not.
But can I question this? Because I think it's the same with code, right? The less you write, the better. So I don't think the work is actually in writing the words.
Yeah. The work is not in writing the words. The work is in deciding what to write, which is exactly the same as with code. So, but it turns out that knowing what to write and in what order is important. But yeah.
So, okay, sorry to stop this, but what did you estimate? How long will it take to write a book, and how many pages will you end up with?
Oh, so I didn't. I roughly estimated the length of the chapters, which like I said, I based around what I see as normal chapter lengths, and then varied around that. So an average of 30 pages a chapter is pretty much, I think, where I ended up with. And some of them I estimated as 20 because those are
lighter subjects. Yeah.
Lighter subjects, shorter or more bridging chapters between different parts, and so I estimated as a little more, and then the total of it is 18 chapters. So
500 pages roughly.
Yeah, that's quite a number of pages.
Yeah, that fits you, right? It shouldn't be a short book, right? I know you for a while, so I know you've got stuff to say, and I mean this is in the nicest way possible. So it needs to be a big book.
So what I've noticed while writing is, as long as I know where I'm going, the writing itself is easy. That's not a problem.
Same as code.
If I get confused about where I'm going, it stops completely. But that's a different issue. But So I don't think the problem is it's not in generating words. I mean, that's not the goal, right? The goal is in, can I actually explain this in a way that makes sense?
Yeah, you want to grab the reader, that he follows the story and stays engaged, I guess. And that's probably a lot harder than just writing something about a subject that you might know a lot about. But to make it engaging, I think is a big challenge. So did you submit something for review yet? Because I can imagine the first time it comes back with like everything crossed out and like very disheartening, I would imagine.
Yes, there was a lot. There was a lot of comments. Some of these are. You say that? Some of these are form. Because
it's not your native language, right? Because I'm assuming you're writing it in English as well.
I am writing it in English, and I'm comfortable with English. That's not that doesn't give me too much of an issue. I definitely make errors. I think I probably make fewer errors in English than I do in Dutch by now. But that's mostly because I do more in English than in Dutch. But and there's no D's and DT's and D.
Yeah, Dutch is a weird language, man.
Who does that? Anyway, but so no, a lot of the comments initially were about form, as in they have their own style, right? As a publisher, you have your own style, but also you have your own expectations about how we use examples, how we style about how you enter from one chapter or one section in a chapter to the next, how you connect those two. And so there a lot of comments about the flow of the words, not so much about the structure of a sentence, though. There's definitely this. I'm not sure what this means. Comments. That definitely happens. I know I have an issue with sentences and commas. Sometimes the sentences never end, and that can be a bit of an issue. So I try to pay attention to that, but sometimes that escapes. Now, most of the comments were about okay, can we fit this in? Does this chapter have a good start, a good ending? Are the subjects well connected? And the first chapter, that was really difficult. The second, it was a little easier.
Okay.
And I actually think it's getting easier, but we'll see.
The more you do
Did you have any experience before writing the book, like on writing at all?
No. Well, I have. I've written blog posts and that sort of thing.
Exactly.
Never something of length. And
is that even comparable to writing a book? Because it feels to me that a blog is just, I just dump something on the internet and that's done. I think a book is on a total different level.
Go visit our blog, people.
Nice sales pitch, Paul.
I mean, I put a lot of thought in it and...
Oh, sorry.
But for me, it's really different because, how do you say that? Let's assume I mean this in a nice way. But when I'm writing a blog post, I don't care about my audience that much.
This is getting better and better. Yeah.
No,
You have zero visitors, do you?
Well, there is that. That has consequences, I know. But it's much easier for a blog post to, in the subject itself, in whatever you're writing about, you do a selection on the audience, right?
Yeah.
So you can you have assumptions about what they can what they already know and what they can understand, and if they don't, maybe you can direct them to somewhere else on the internet, but you don't have to take
Elaborate.
them along on a ride through, hundreds of pages.
Yeah.
And that was actually, that for me, at least while writing the book, that's a really difficult thing, because how do you create the balance between explaining too much and explaining too little?
Well, how do you do that?
Well, I don't know. Yeah, it's
So if you're writing the book, are you assuming that people know some certain things? Like you mentioned Agile, for example. Are you assuming people know what it is, or are you actually going down that subject?
Yeah, so that's really difficult. When if you're talking about product managers and product owners, when I write a book for them, I would expect them to have some experience in that role, and logically that would mean that they would know something about, for instance, Agile.
Yeah.
In practice, that is not necessarily the same thing as I understand that to be.
Yeah.
Maybe you go a step further on that, because are you actually explaining the difference between a product owner and a product manager? Because even that is debatable in the market.
No, I'm not.
Okay, so you're not going that far.
I'm staying away from that one.
Okay.
No, I'm definitely not trying to do that in the book. I'm just, but I am very much, for instance, going into. I'm going into, okay, so if you're in a product role, these are the types of situations you can get into, right? So it could be an Agile project or an Agile situation. It could be completely traditional waterfall. It could be somewhere in between. And I don't care. I'm just describing the ways that you can have gotten to the state that you're in. And I just try to explain that all of those things have their own problems. And within each of those ways of working, we can end up with a legacy system. And in fact, realistically, probably you have ended up with that sort of system. And I try to explain, okay, these are the reasons why we end up with problems. And I try to, for instance, introduce at a very, very lightweight level, introduce a little systems thinking, a little appreciation of the law of unintended consequences, right? There's always unintended consequences. So I try to explain that no matter how good the intentions are, you can end up in a mess, and that's okay. And now once we know how that sort of thing can happen, we can do something about it. That's kind of what I'm trying to do.
And if you're writing the book, if you have the outline, well, you wrote the outline. I saw it actually. And in your head, do you have certain subjects you want to touch on that part? And do you actually, when you start writing, do you research them as well? Like if you're actually correct on the matter, or is it on your own personal experience?
Both, right? For writing the outline, I didn't need to do any research because that's just that level. I am intimately familiar with everything in there. When I'm writing about a specific subject, everything that I've got in the outline, I know the broad lines and I know where to find the information. So, because I've been doing this for a long time. So, if I'm writing about a subject and I know, okay, so I need to get that book, and look up some of the details, look up some of the phrasing on exactly how that is presented, so that I can get it in the right form in my book.
Right.
And do you also challenge your own ideas on the subject matters?
Why would I do that?
Okay,
I'm always right.
Well, it's just things change, right? So a book could be outdated within a year if somebody else has a better idea.
I would hope so. But so I try to be very explicit about why we're doing things. So a lot of the first section of the book, after I've gone into, okay, so we're talking about these problems and this is how we get there. A lot of that is simply getting some control over a legacy system and how you steer that from a product point of view. And the way that I do that is I try and use some of the tools that certainly product owners or working in an agile setting are probably familiar with, like behavior-driven development, story mapping, example mapping, those sort of things. But not necessarily. Of course, not everyone uses those things. But I try to use those same tools to illustrate how you can get control over releasing a legacy system. That's basically the first set of that.
Do you think that most product owners are actually familiar with, like, for example, behavior-driven or test-driven development? Because I feel a lot of product owners that I've at least worked with will say, like, well, that's up to the developers to decide. I don't care how they do it as long as these features get built.
Actually, I've spoken to quite a few developers that share that sentiment.
Sure, but
no, not everyone is familiar with that.
But I do like it that you say, like, it should also be part of the product owner's vocabulary, or at least be aware that this is a effective way of going about things.
Yeah, it's so like I said, for a long stretch of time, I've been going into different types of companies, and I maybe am sometimes a little sneaky. But
what does that mean, man?
What it means is that one constant is that all of the companies are in trouble trying to release their software.
Yeah.
Usually because of quality issues, because of not knowing how to test, not knowing when to stop testing. But there's whether I worked and just the last 3 or 4 companies, that it is varied from like a 30-person large startup with one development team to BMW, which I don't know has how many tens of thousands of people, but the section I was working with had like 30 teams in there. But they all run into the same problem, which is basically they develop something and they can't release it, or at least they need to. They need to have a manual test cycle of longer usually than the development took to get there. And that would not have happened if they actually knew how to do behavior-driven development, test-driven development.
Right. But from my perspective, that's a development problem, not necessarily a product owner problem. I agree that's a problem, but
I don't agree with that.
Okay.
I think that it's something that you hear a lot of from both developers and product people, but also from some coaches. I think over the summer, I think it was the XP conference, but I'm not sure which, or the Agile conference. But Arlo Belshi and James Shore, we were definitely not the least in the Agile coaching world. Very explicitly talked about quality being something that is the developers or the engineering side of things, and not and not product. You should not be bothered by that. And
Sorry, repeat.
you should not be.
So products should not be bothered by quality.
Well, delivering to a level of quality should be the responsibility of the engineers. I think that is what they were very explicitly saying that. And the context in which they were saying that is that you can't really control that too much from the level of detail that you see as a product owner.
Yeah, okay. So I guess what you're saying,
they're saying
everyone has their domain and you need to be a professional in your own domain. Whether you're an engineer, you deliver quality. Whether you're a product owner, you deliver quality. But the way you worded it, it sounded like, well,
yeah. No, well, that's kind of what it sounded like initially, and I hear a lot of that, so I'm going into that a little. One of the things that Arlo said was a lot of quality depends on decisions you make in the moment, the second and minute, not the hour and day, and let alone the week and month, right? So, and some of that I think is true. I think that if you really want to deliver quality, then developers need to focus on quality with every step of the way. But and this is the case in most situations, when you're already in a situation where there is not a base level of quality, you can't get there. You can't get there if it's just the developers.
Why not?
Maybe ideally you should be able to, but it's never the case, right? Because the reason you got to this place is also a shared responsibility.
It's not just the developers. That's what you're saying.
It's never just the developers.
You were kind enough to share a preview of a chapter of your book, right? And in it is actually a definition that you use for legacy, and I kind of like that, and I think that you should explain that one. But I can read it. That's right. So legacy is all the attributes of a system, including the organization building the system, that prevents us from delivering at the pace and quality needed and expected by the market. So you're not just talking about the code base. I think that's what you're...
Yeah, the fact that the code base does not have the level of quality that you would like it to have is a result of not working in the way that you should have been working, right? It cannot be anything else.
Yeah.
So that also means that if you want to improve, that code base, you need to improve whatever's around it. And
down the rabbit hole. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, right? Where do you start? And the only way to do that is, and this is, I think, where it becomes a little difficult. The best way to improve an existing system where you can't just throw it away and start over, and even if that you would like to do that, the best way to do that is to take small steps. Right, that's the basis of a lot of our agile practices. Take small steps and stay in control. But if you've got a huge gap, then you cannot take those small steps without also taking in the larger steps in consideration. And you can't do that with just the developer. If you go into literally any organization, any development team right now, and ask them, so what is keeping you from having the system in a state where as you would like it to be, right? Mm-hmm. And first of all, 90% of them will say that the system is not in a state where they would like it to be. Right?
I think everybody says that.
Including not the developers. I think this goes for the same company, but for the whole company.
Yeah. But first you ask the developers and you ask them, okay, why can't you do that? That's usually because we're not allowed to, right? And we're not allowed to is a little easy, but they are saying that the conditions in which they're working, and usually that's due to pressure, and pressure comes from management, or sometimes from product, but also In the end, always comes from the top. But they feel pressure to deliver with and taking shortcuts.
Yep.
But
new features need to be delivered every
go
week.
talk to the product people.
Yep.
Sorry, Rolf.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying, they have to deliver these features every sprint again and again and again, and it's just relentless. And I can follow your reasoning so far, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, there's whole sections of the internet just talking about development factories and that sort of thing.
Feature factories. Yep.
I think those are a side effect of a way of work, a way of looking at how we work. But in the same organizations, if you ask the product people what's wrong, first of all they'll say, we can't deliver. Why can't we deliver? Yeah, because the quality is shit.
Yeah, or they take too long.
There's if we start testing whatever we got out of development, it can take weeks before or sometimes months.
But what I don't understand about the story is what I don't understand is that let's say the quality of the dev team is low. No, that's wrong. The state of the system is pretty low.
The system. I think that's your point.
The development guys.
Persons.
And you broke my question. What's your? Now I'm confused myself. Anyways, you have a legacy system, and your developers it grinds to a halt. You cannot release anything. I'm not so. What I don't get is that teaching the product owners what behavior-driven development is, or testing per se, solves that issue. I'm not sure. I don't get that connection. Because to me, it's a quality issue for development team, and maybe management pressures it. I get that, but I'm not sure how it solves anything if product owners also know how to solve it.
Well, I think that, I think that one of the most important things we can do for any organization is to actually create a team that works together with clear and common goals.
Yeah.
Right.
When you said team, it's product and development, right?
It cannot be anything but.
Okay.
All the people to do the work.
Yes.
Yeah. So pretty much all the people needed to actually deliver. Yeah. And most situations that you will find, or at least that I found, I do accept that there's a certain selection bias if you're a coach going into situations where there's
problems,
things are not ideal. But every place, pretty much, you find there is like a rift between engineering and product, and they're usually pointing fingers over that rift, right? That's never going to help. But at the same time, and I think that that's really important, both of those are right. So both sides of that discussion are right.
Sure. Yeah.
So the engineers are absolutely right when they say we're being pressured to skip on quality. At the same time, product people are very much right in saying we're not getting the level of quality that we would expect.
Yep.
So the first thing I try to do when I go into an organization is to try and breed some empathy for the other side. Right? So that's number one. So yeah.
And is it also chapter 1 of the book?
It's also chapter 1. No, but if they're both right, then obviously we have a communication issue here, right? And sometimes the communication issue is simply time, right? The reason we got to the place where we are may not be the same people even that we're working with right now, but the results of their actions has resulted in ways of working that gives us a less than ideal result. What we need to fix that is to get everyone on board. When you talk to a product owner, the reaction will will usually be, that I can't do anything about that. That's they control quality. That's I think exactly what you were saying earlier. And in a very real way, that's true. If I'm in a bad mood, I might talk to some development team and say, guys, what the hell is going on here? Yes, you're under pressure, but there's no excuse for not even checking whether, you could still run this piece of code well before you pushed it into production. But those moments definitely happen. But at the same time, the pressure that they're talking about is there, and we need to alleviate that. For me, the best way to do that is to get everyone on board. So what I want to do is I want to give the product people the tools to actually go into that conversation about what we need to do to improve quality, informed and with tools that both sides can use together and understand to move it forward. And so initially I used things like story mapping and example mapping simply to as a placeholder to show, okay, so we've got these different types of testings. We've got these things that are high level, and we've got these things that dive deep. The things that dive deep and go into detail, those are really good for like fast unit testing. Right. The things that go high level, you're okay doing that manually, but you might want to automate that if you really want to. But the most important thing is that you actually explicitly together decide what functionality is in there and how do you want that tested. And the way the tools, the practices I'm using, I use them off the shelf because in the end they don't matter that much, right? It's they're a way to make sure that people actually work together to solve the problem.
So what is the end goal then? Because if you're writing it for product owners and you're teaching them about engineering qualities, let's call it like that, are you expecting from them to actually be able to go into discussions with the developers? Like, guys, come on, you should do X or Y?
Yes.
Or how do you see this? So that's what you want?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I expect a product owner to actually own the product, including quality. Right.
So you just may give them a curated book list, like give this to your developers?
Yes, or the other way around. You can give the developers this book and say give it to the product owner, which
nice
would give me sales. So that's probably the better approach.
Does it also include that the product owner can maybe even help with the automated testing, like write the acceptance criteria in such a way that they can be copied verbatim in the test suites and stuff like that?
Well,
no, you would like that, huh?
No.
Outsource your testing.
Hey man, it's less work.
So, I'm very much in favor of having the three amigos for that sort of thing. So, in my experience, that's sort of I want the product owner involved in making the decisions. I want them to have intimate knowledge about the functionality, right? About the logic that's in the application. And that means for a legacy application, that very often means that they need to discover that because
nobody knows.
Probably not there, right? They need to excavate the code from and the functionality by using it. And I'm using these practices to give form and give a goal to that process of excavating the functionality. That's what I want them to do. And then I want them to explicitly say, okay, that means that these sort of tests we need to do to be able to cover the functionality well enough, whether that's manually or automated. And, so the journey level, broad tests.
Yep.
And I want them to have discussions with the developers and the testers on which other tests they can push down. And then what we end up with is a fairly normal testing strategy where we, basically push things into the form of the testing pyramid.
So
but
if you
logical results of the iterative process.
Yep.
That's kind of the
So if you go down this path, so you have like the developers and you have the product owner, you educate each other or work together or whatever. But it doesn't not necessarily solve the issue in the first place, like the pressure which is on the team, which made you go in the legacy issue in the first place. So are you also addressing that in the book?
I'm trying to address that by making it very clear that whatever we do has
consequences.
Consequences. Some of them intentional, some of them
a lot of them
intentional.
I know I already asked it, but I do think you should describe, at least from your perspective, what a product manager is, because I think you're talking about product managers, right? They're in the middle of the organization. That's how you word it. They're looking at all the things, and they are responsible for the product. And the typical product owner, at least that I have encountered, isn't in that position.
That depends on the size of the company that you're in, and very often they don't necessarily have different titles for the two roles, which makes for a lot of confusion. So I agreed. So I say that. So on the one hand, we have the directly working with the team product owner that goes into this this sort of cycle. A product manager would not necessarily go into that same level of detail, but depending on the size of the company. Yeah, that's pretty much where I end up. I don't know whether that matters much. In the end, the pain is still the same, even if whether you're at the level of a product manager or at a product owner working directly with a team. The pain is still, I can't deliver fast enough. I can't react to market circumstances because I'm slow. And that doesn't change.
Right. I was wondering, right? Because a lot of these solutions, or maybe not solutions, but like these methodologies that we've been discussing, a lot of them are quite technical. But do you also offer non-technical patterns for these teams to adopt? I don't know, building, doing some sense of belonging type of things where you really try to build the team cohesiveness, or try to change.
That's our book, man.
Oh. Damn it! Try to change the way that
joking.
command and control is being dealt with in the organization as a whole, or like is there also non-technical stuff that you put up there? You talked about the communication part already, but I don't know if there's
quite a large part of my book is more about either the practices or process. Right. It's not about the soft side of things. If you want to, if I can put it in that in those terms, and I think that's good because that's not me.
Right. Okay.
I am mostly in the line of thinking that if we structure the work well, a large part of the team dynamics and the more interpersonal things will sort itself out. Not all of them, because it's there. We're talking about humans, but a large part.
I get what you're saying. If people are making progress,
exactly,
then things will fall out. But if you're saying, well, structure the work, then I see that my nightmare product owner entering things in Jira.
I'm not. I think it's more mentioning about change the environment, change the behavior. I think that's the point.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
Yeah. I very much think that how you say that mindset follows behavior and not the other way around.
Yeah.
It's a little. I can see Sylvester. I can see.
No, I'm not going down this rabbit hole. I know there's too many.
I find your lack of faith disturbing. Yeah.
It's neither one nor the other, but the way that I work, I mostly go at it from that direction because that's the part that I'm strongest in. And I recognize, or at least I sometimes recognize when that fails. I don't know whether I recognize it in all cases because then I wouldn't have recognized it. But I sometimes recognize when that fails, and then I change the focus. I do attack that. I do address that directly.
So what fails and how did you address it?
Sorry?
So what failed and how did you address it? Can you give an example?
Well, there have been situations where there was, how do you say that? There was strife, there was unrest in the team, and it was at it was definitely at a personal level. So,
okay.
A lot of times when I see a team that's not working well together, or that falls apart in different groups, I try to restructure the work so that they automatically need to work together. And for me, most of the time that solves the issue, because when people are actually working together towards a common goal, they tend to find that they like each other more.
but where did you think you failed then?
Sometimes it doesn't work because there's been enough history that you can't address it.
Can't be fixed anymore. Yeah.
Or because there is something outside of the work environment where people just don't get along, or sometimes, and that has happened as well, they simply don't know how to talk to each other, right? This is and I bring that back to hey, wait a minute, that's a skill, we can work on that, but that does happen,
right?
It doesn't happen as often, in my experience, as we in our industry tend to like to think, right? There's a certain predisposition to assume that all the developers are like less than inclined to social interaction, and
old school cave dwellers. Yeah,
those sort of like archetypes are there, and they're there for a reason. That's not. I mean, it happens, but it doesn't happen as often as I think.
It's getting outdated for sure. 100%.
Yeah.
So I'll continue. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I'm just going to say the same thing again in a different way until everyone agrees.
See, I know your tactic.
Yeah. So I was
get the 30 chapters now.
I was wondering, because we've been talking about the book and the contents of it, but what do you hope to achieve, when it comes out? I'm not saying if, I'm saying when, because I have faith in, it's going to happen. But what do you hope to achieve with it? Do you hope to turn a company around without even being there in the first place? Because, hey, they read the book and they've turned things around and now things are going great? Or is it more meant as food for thought and, hey, if you need more help, give me a call? What's the goal?
Well, I am a consultant, so, there's always an aspect of that in it.
And that's fine, right?
I won't say that there isn't.
Yeah.
But what I would really like, if I can have an impact, is that, and that's that also, I think that can happen because of the surveys we did and the feedback we got. But what I would really like is primarily the understanding, in this case mostly for product people, that this is normal. It's not good,
right?
But it's normal. They're not alone. It is really difficult, but you can fix it. and you can really improve it on it. And you don't have to do that in one big step. You know, the CEO doesn't have to step in and fix everything by declaring that from now on quality will be high.
But that always works.
But should he step in and now say, okay, we're working as product teams?
I think that in general, it is a good thing if we set up the organization in such a way that it actually encourages people to work together. I also think that I also think it's really good for the senior leadership to step up and actually say that. But that's like the first step, right? I mean, you know how this works. I mean, if you've all seen nominally agile teams where work comes in and someone does it.
That's the thing. We had a lot of guests visiting this podcast, right? And one of them was Niels Vleging, and I kind of like his thinking, and I think you might have seen it. And his thinking is basically, okay, you can try to change the system, or you make bigger steps in actually flipping the system around. And that's similar to what you were saying, right? That people don't change their behavior unless something changes. And
yeah, incentives are really powerful, and I'm not talking about money, but
Also,
of course. No, but incentives are really powerful if they're set up in such a way that you cannot work in a constructive way. Then it's almost impossible to go against that. And Niels Vleging, and I think you've also had Dan Matic here. I like their models. I don't necessarily like the way that they try to move towards them.
Oh, that's a whole separate discussion. But there's something there. And what I'm thinking, or what I'm wondering is, okay, let's say you are a product owner. You're in this position, right? And you see a team frustrating with legacy. Okay, you buy the book by Wouter Lagerweij to at least understand what they're facing and how you can help them. But can you actually help them? That's my main question, because you're still working in the same system, right? Something led to that team
With
creating
the
the legacy, creating the conditions, that
pressure,
whatever, right? The system is still there.
And this is I think where this is probably the place where I'm going in a different direction than where Vleging and Matic were at. I actually do think that there's value in smaller change. I don't necessarily think you it's a little how do you say that? It's not internally consistent to say that we like working in increments and we're dealing with complex situations and we need to navigate towards a better setup. That's not consistent with saying, okay, we need to change the whole system before anything will work. I think that I've definitely seen drastic improvements in even larger organizations that have really helped at least the people working on the floor.
That we've seen a lot as well, and maybe that's also our thinking, right? That we've seen a lot of. Can I actually say this? Well, we have seen in the past that we help a company and the people start improving and they start learning, but they're also discovering the system hasn't changed, so they're looking for greener fields.
Yeah. So this has been my way of looking at it and my way of finding satisfaction in my job as well. If what usually happens is that, and this is like sometimes it's really good and the company actually changes at a fundamental level, and you get to a whole new state of being. Usually, at least the situation where we're in, that project or that time frame works better than it did before, and a lot of the people have seen different ways of working, and even then, if you then step out, if you go away as a consultant, they fall back into some old habits, and then sometimes they crawl back into almost where you had them, and both the falling back in old habits is still better than what was there before, right?
For the time being.
Yeah.
There's a separate podcast for this, man. It could take for ages, this discussion.
But we have a lot of we have a lot of people there then that know what to do. Sometimes, Professor, where we've seen this, and I've seen it repeatedly. Sometimes you go away, and half a year later, there's like an exodus.
Yeah.
Right.
Sometimes earlier.
The company didn't change. Even the direct management of the development teams didn't change enough, and people just leave and find a better place to work.
Yeah,
that's also success, but not the type of success that you want for the company, of course, because they paid you. But
that's my point. But so, in summary, do you actually agree with what I just said? Unless you change the system, you're not going to fix the problem for the company. Then, for the people, maybe.
Yeah, and the more people you have that actually consciously are trying to change the system, the better the chance that it's actually changing. And that's
okay. That part I kind of like. Yeah.
But I've repeatedly seen also when even the C-levels were saying the right words, the system didn't necessarily change. Yeah. I've repeatedly also seen. Them giving the right instructions and middle management, product people, developers, not knowing how to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so if we don't give them tools, practices, skills to be able to execute on that, then nothing is going to happen. I'm definitely on. There's a lot of focus within the Agile community about. You have to have self-steering teams. Teams need to be able to have control over the way that they work. They have to, be able to select their tools, their practices, and all of that. And this is true, but you need to give them a certain base level of instruction. You need to they need to be aware of how things impact.
I'm not sure if I agree, but
separate podcast again. Separate podcast.
Yeah, we can
definitely separate podcast.
Yeah, we can schedule something new for sure.
Do you know Thierry de Pauw?
Mm-hmm.
He's a Belgian coach. He's been doing a lot of talking about chunk-based development.
Yeah,
I like him already. Yeah.
Exactly. So so he's a friend, and he was writing about this a while back. He was saying, okay, so why do people keep doing that, right? And why can't you talk them out of it? Because we think we know that doing things differently will actually be better. So if we have a team and they have control over the way that they work, why will they not decide to do the better thing? And one of the reasons is that they're, in my opinion at least, is that they're in like a local optimum. Yep. So they ran into all kinds of different problems because of all kinds of different circumstances, and they put guardrails in place. And for them, branching is a primary defense against chaos. And what we're saying is, throw it away.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't work.
You don't need that. It doesn't work.
But
you're going to be much.
This is a different podcast but I've learned it doesn't work to tell people stop doing that.
Yeah, I warned you, Sylvester. I have no sense of focus. So
I know that. I know. That's kind of. I like that. And actually, I find it more impressive that you're writing a book, and we need to get back to that topic. So
yes.
I have one more question for you, right? So, is there also financial success for you? If you, what happens if you publish this and it becomes an Amazon bestseller? And well, it's actually tax, so probably not. But okay, what happens? Do you make money out of this stuff, or is it more okay? Let's see what happens.
I sincerely doubt it.
Okay.
So, no, if I didn't take an advance on the book, I can't deal with that sort of pressure. But no, but if it would be really successful, but then it would have to be, I don't know, in the top 20 of best-selling books in this area, then it would make me a reasonable amount of money, but definitely unlikely to make me as much money that if I actually spend that time working for clients.
Right.
Do you charge that much?
Enough. He charges enough. Yeah.
I'm joking. Yeah. Okay.
So that's my back of the envelope calculation for that. It's
I really like the idea, right? And of course, this is for Scouts. We're always critical about whatever. Actually, I would love to. I keep reading the preview, and if you like, I'm more than willing to give comments and say how I don't agree.
Oh, I love that.
That I can do, and looking forward to the book. So when is it done?
When is it published? That's even a better question.
Yeah, same thing, right? Definition of done.
Yes. My definition of done would be when the publisher has actually accepted the book, and then they need to publish it. But then I can't influence the speed anymore. And at the current speed, that will be probably end of March
next year.
Right, somewhere around that time.
Okay.
So that's roughly where we're at.
Okay.
So and if that's the case, then that means it would be normally published somewhere within 3 months of that.
All right. So summer of 22.
Summer of 22.
Summer.
Yeah. Well,
the season of
an
summer.
estimation.
Spring.
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah.
No, so let's hope that let's hope in all ways that 22 will be
Better.
have a little more cause for celebration, but this would be one for me.
All right. Well, that sounds pretty good. And on that hopeful message, I think that we're at the end of this episode. I think we can keep on talking for a couple of more hours on the individual subjects in the book and maybe even outside of the book as well. But I think that will have to wait for another episode. So, Wouter, thank you very much for sharing your experiences with us. We didn't even talk about your writer's block, man. So that might be next time. But so I really hope that things work out, and looking forward to seeing the book in real life.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, you have writer's block again. Just pop on the show. Maybe that's our answer, right? And we'll talk more.
Get inspired. So I would also take this opportunity to thank the listener. Thank you for tuning in as always. And if you have any questions, then feel free to send us an email, podcast@forscouts.nl. Wouter, can people ask you any questions on Twitter as well?
You can always find me on Twitter, and I'm definitely dealing with my writer's block by being more.
All right.
So not dealing. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. We'll include your Twitter handle in the description. All right. So thank you very much for listening, and see you guys next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Scoutcast, Roasting Marshmallows, with your host, Rolf Surd. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit forscouts.nl and on Twitter @forscouts. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time on Scoutcast, Roasting Marshmallows.